Welcome back, guys. It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. So I'll be going over my top 5 quarterback tier list. So I'll be going through 5 tiers of quarterbacks, covering about 15 to 20 quarterbacks here, and just talking about where I think each of these quarterbacks lie. I'll sort of highlight which guys I think end up actually being good values based on this as well, and sort of my general expectations for the quarterback position as a whole. I'll be following this video up with videos on the running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends as well, so stay tuned for those. It's going to be a lot of fun, and always fun making these videos. I find that tier list drafting and just having rankings based off of tiers tends to be the most effective way to go into your draft. That way you understand when you're entering a new tier, when you're at the end of a tier. It really helps you decide which positions you should be targeting at which spots in your draft, and just really helps make sure you are making as educated of decisions as possible in your drafts. So a lot of fun doing these. Plenty of potentially controversial things here. This is often based off of my rankings in combination just with the upside and risk I see associated with each of these players. So these players are not showing up exactly in the way I have them statted out, but it's sort of a hybrid combination of where I expect them to lie based off of that and in combination with what I think their upside is. So fun taking a look at this and seeing how it pans out, and yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy. So yeah, with that, let's just get into tier 1 here. So starting things off with the tier 1 of the quarterback position, I'm going to call this the elite tier. These are the guys that I expect to be just really high-end performers over the course of the entire season, and I don't really see any potential red flags for. And I've got 3 quarterbacks I'll highlight here, and I'll start things off with the pretty obvious one in Josh Allen, my quarterback 1 and the consensus quarterback 1, being drafted 17th overall. Clearly, we as a fantasy community have no concern over the fact that he lost both Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis this offseason. There are plenty of weapons around him, and Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir. We know Kincaid and James Cook are going to be extremely involved, and we know Josh Allen can just do a ton with the ball in his hands, just on the ground as well. So Allen's obviously an elite player. He's probably going to finish as a top 3 quarterback again this season. My only knock on him would just be that he's being picked in the second round, going 17th overall. I personally think that's too early to be drafting a quarterback. I tend to feel that round 3 is about as early as I'm willing to go there. So if Allen slips into round 3, I think he's a perfectly fine value, but you just won't find me really drafting much Josh Allen this season, at least at this ADP. Next up, we've got C.J. Stroud, who's currently being drafted as the quarterback 5, going 44th overall. He stats out as my quarterback 2, and I'm super excited about C.J. Stroud here. I could see myself ending up with a lot of him if he's a guy that I can get at the end of the 4th or early 5th round. Obviously, we saw him put up a really high-end performance last season, and did that while only throwing for 23 passing touchdowns last season. That tends to be the thing we see the biggest jump for quarterbacks between year 1 and year 2 in. And on top of that, he's added Stephon Diggs to this wide receiver room. I've been pretty vocal about not necessarily expecting Stephon Diggs to be a world beater over here, but I do think he's definitely an upgrade over what they had as their wide receiver 3 from like Noah Brown and Robert Woods. Tank Dell coming into year 2 should be even more impressive on the field than he was last season, and Nico Collins is obviously going to be a very important factor in this offense, and C.J. Stroud should just be a better player as well. So I think C.J. Stroud could easily finish as the quarterback 1. Obviously, he's going to need a massive season to do that because he's not going to offer a ton on the ground, but he's just so talented. The weapons around him are so great that I do expect big things out of Stroud this season, and I think taking him in the 4th or early 5th round is really great value. So I think right now he's the best value of these quarterbacks in tier 1. And the third quarterback I'll talk about, the last quarterback that falls into tier 1 for me, is going to be Jalen Hurts. He's currently being drafted as the 2nd quarterback off the board, going with the last pick in the 2nd round at 24th overall. He comes in as my quarterback 3, so a little bit behind here just because I do like C.J. Stroud just a little bit more. But there's really not a whole lot to complain about here with Jalen Hurts. He's going to be super consistent because of all that touchdown production he's going to get on the ground. We know he's got elite weapons around him in A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert. Now he's got Saquon Barkley come out of the backfield. It's going to be really easy to see another top 3 finish for Jalen Hurts this season. The only way things could potentially go wrong here would be if the departure of Jason Kelce effectively removes their use of the tush push. So then we just see Saquon Barkley put up a 15 touchdown season or something, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Jalen Hurts is a powerful runner. He's definitely got the body to take that pounding. He's going to be a guy that's going to get used near the goal line. I think another double-digit rushing touchdown season is in store for him. So Hurts, for me, he's my least favorite of the 3, actually, even based off of value. I like Josh Allen quite a bit more than Jalen Hurts, but even though he's going a few picks earlier, and I do think that Jalen Hurts maybe doesn't have the same ceiling that both Allen and C.J. Stroud do, but I think all 3 of these guys are super safe picks, and I'd be super happy with any one of them on my roster. Next up, we're going to move into tier two, and I'm going to define this tier two as guys that I think have a great shot at finishing inside the top five at the position that were not included in tier one here. So starting things off for me is going to be Dak Prescott, the quarterback seven and by consensus ADP right now, going in the middle of round five at pick 56. Currently comes in as my quarterback four, and I think he's another one of the great values here available to us just because he's currently being drafted so much later than some of these other guys we're going to talk about. Being able to get Dak in the fifth round, a guy who did finish as the quarterback two last season. We saw him put up a monster season last year where they really sort of just shifted towards being a completely aired out offense. CeeDee Lamb was absolutely dominant. They lost Tony Pollard this offseason. They brought in Ezekiel Elliott, who is by no means the Ezekiel Elliott that he once was. This is a team that's going to need to air it out, and their defense is actually maybe not quite as good as people give it credit for. It's really boom or bust. They can certainly get beat through the air. They will give up enough points that the Cowboys do need to score a lot of points over the course of the season, and they're going to be able to do that. Dak Prescott should easily be a really high-end performer, and I think he is one of the better values right now being drafted so much later than a lot of these other guys. So very excited about Dak this season. Next, I'll talk about Patrick Mahomes here. Obviously, would have been disrespectful to keep him out of tier two here. He's the quarterback three by consensus ADP. Going at the end of round three at pick 34 overall. He comes in as my quarterback five, so I'm a little bit behind consensus on him. I think we're going to see him be a little bit closer to what he was last season than what he has been historically when he was on that like MVP pace. But that being said, he's still Patrick Mahomes. He can obviously put up a 5,000-yard, 40-touchdown season, and we've seen him do it. And if he does that, he could easily be the quarterback one, so we've got to include him in here. But I don't really like the value on him. He's going 34th overall. The third round for me is way too early. I prefer Dak Prescott to him. I obviously prefer CJ Stroud, who's going later. There's just a lot of guys that are going at much better values for me. So I don't see myself drafting Patrick Mahomes a lot, but obviously I have no qualms with it if you want to. He could easily be the quarterback one, and he's obviously a great player. Lamar also going to make it here into tier two. He's currently being drafted as the quarterback four by consensus ADP, going 40th overall, so in the middle of that fourth round. He currently comes in as my quarterback eight. Just because I'm a little bit lower than consensus on him doesn't mean I don't like Lamar Jackson. I think, though, that you're going to need like a boom production season from him on the ground. I find that in general, when I end up statting quarterbacks out, it's hard for me to project like those 1,000-yard seasons just because they've been so few and far between. We've seen like 3 or 4 quarterbacks do it over the course of the entire NFL history. So basically, when I do my initial projections, I feel like the rushing quarterbacks do come in a little bit lower than what they should outside of rushing touchdown production. And Lamar Jackson really doesn't offer a whole lot of rushing touchdown production just because his body doesn't really allow that. I do think Derrick Henry is going to be a guy that's going to siphon a lot of goal line work here, but Lamar's still great. He's probably going to rush for 800 yards this season, throw for just over 3,000. 30 plus total touchdowns is obviously in store here, and we know he can be a week winning performer here. So, and we have obviously seen him be the quarterback one overall as well. So I've got no problems drafting him here. I don't necessarily love the value. Like I said, I prefer CJ Stroud to him. I prefer Dak Prescott to him. Two guys that go later. So I don't see myself drafting a ton of Lamar, but I do think that he's certainly a guy that I could be interested in, and obviously he can be a league winning asset. And then last, and maybe the most surprising one of these guys that I'm going to talk about, is going to be Jordan Love, currently being drafted as the quarterback 8, going 58th overall. He comes in as my quarterback 6. He's someone that I'm actually just super excited about this season. He's got a ton of talent around him. I know they don't have a true alpha wide receiver 1 in that offense, but there is a ton of talent in that wide receiver room. Christian Watson is great. Jaden Reed proved to me that I think he's their best wide receiver last season. He's clearly going to be a player that's going to stick around in the NFL and be a good player for a long time. Reminds me a lot of what they had in like Randall Cobb in years past in Green Bay. Obviously, Romeo Doubs is a perfectly competent wide receiver, one of the better wide receiver threes in the entire NFL. And they've got depth behind those guys. They've got Dontavian Wicks, who a lot of people are super excited about. He showed a lot of flashes last season. Malik Heath was a good player when called upon. They've got 2 good young tight ends. Josh Jacobs is going to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield, and this defense just isn't necessarily great enough to make this team not need to air it out. Their philosophy is going to be letting Jordan Love and this wide receiver core and their pass catchers win them games, and he showed he could do that last season. He finished second in the NFL passing touchdowns, did that effectively as a rookie, and I'm just entirely expecting another step forward here for Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love might end up being the quarterback I draft the most of this season because I think he's potentially the best value. You can often get him a lot later than that 58th overall like we're seeing here, and if you're getting him in the 6th, 7th round as a guy that could legitimately be a top 5 quarterback, I think that's a really great value, and I'm super excited about Jordan Love this season. Next up, we're moving into tier three, and I'm going to highlight four quarterbacks that I think I'm going to call quality starters. There's a bit of a difference here, just because I do think it was tough to define this tier because I do think these guys are a tier below the guys in tier two, but there's still obviously a ton of upside here. I'll start things off with Kyler Murray, who's going as the quarterback 10 by consensus ADP right now, being drafted 67th overall, and he comes in as my quarterback 12. So, despite the fact that I am below consensus on him, I do think that the upside here is clearly very high. There's just a lot of unknowns. Obviously, we didn't see him come back and be the true elite quarterback that we've seen him be prior to that ACL injury. And on top of that, we've got Trey McBride hoping he takes a step forward here in year two, and we've got Marvin Harrison operating as the number one wide receiver here. So when you've got a rookie wide receiver being your number one, there's obviously a lot of question marks there. But I think Kyler Murray, with what he's going to offer on the ground, he's going to be a really solid starter for us as long as he can stay healthy. And if things break right for him, we know he's got the upside to potentially be the quarterback one. We've seen him put stretches like that together, and there's definitely enough talent around him where that could happen again this season. So if you leave the draft with Kyler Murray, I think you're totally set. You're definitely solid there. Probably want to draft someone later on just as like a safe backup, but I think Kyler is definitely a reasonable draft pick this season. Outside of that, we've got Anthony Richardson coming in, being drafted as the quarterback 6 by consensus ADP, going 47th overall. Stats out as my quarterback 18. I just had to laugh at that because I would definitely draft him much higher than that. But like I said earlier, normally when I'm doing my projections, I have a hard time projecting outlier rushing production for quarterbacks, even though it's certainly in the range of outcomes here for Anthony Richardson. I do think that Jonathan Taylor is going to get used a lot near the goal line on this offense. I think that obviously there's a lot of big body wide receivers that can be used near there as well, but I just don't think they're going to want Anthony Richardson to take the pounding that he took the last couple starts he had last season. Obviously, he missed a lot of time. He's still dealing with a banged-up shoulder, so I can't project that high-end performance, but it's impossible to deny the fact that Anthony Richardson could legitimately finish this season as the quarterback one. He's got all the athletic tools to do it. He could easily be a guy, like I said, that rushes for over 1,000 yards, has a 10-plus rushing touchdown season, and then puts up 3,000 yards through the air as well. So we could see that from Anthony Richardson this season, so I have no problem drafting him where he's being drafted. I had to keep him into Tier 3, even though I have him projected so low, just because that upside is insane. The reason I have him drafted, sort of listed a tier lower, is because I think if you do draft Anthony Richardson, you have to draft another quarterback just because there's too much injury risk associated with him. But if there was a year to do it, I think this year's a really good year to do it because there's just so many high-end quarterbacks, guys that I'm comfortable leaving my draft with and having to start over the course of the season. So I think if you want to take that risk, this is a good season to do it. Anthony Richardson's not going to kill you if he gets hurt because there's plenty of viable streaming options, and on that, he has also got the upside to potentially be a league winner. On top of that, we've got Joe Burrow, another sort of injury risk concern with the quarterback position, currently being drafted as the quarterback 9, going 57th overall. Comes in as my quarterback 10, but again, you've seen Joe Burrow be a high-end performer. He's obviously got the weapons to do it in T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, plenty of reason for optimism here. They let Joe Mixon walk this offseason. They've got Chase Brown and Zach Moss in the backfield. This is clearly going to be an offense that runs through Burrow and the wide receivers here. So as long as Burrow can stay healthy and the offense can get back to what it was 2 seasons ago, there's no reason Burrow can't be a top 5 quarterback. But again, it's that guy that maybe you want to take a look at drafting a second quarterback. He's gotten hurt and missed a lot of time in 2 of his 4 seasons in the NFL to this point, so we do have to take that into account. But he's a really good player. He's obviously got a great situation around him, so if you leave your draft with him as your quarterback 1, I think you're totally fine. And then the last guy that I'll put into Tier 3, going to be Brock Purdy here. He's currently being drafted as the quarterback 11, going 82nd overall. He comes in as my quarterback 9. I like Brock Purdy quite a bit. I think he's just a tier ahead of the streaming options we're going to talk about in Tier 4, who are guys that I think are just quality guys but don't necessarily have that upside. The reason is just Brock Purdy doesn't offer anything on the ground. This is too run-heavy of an offense and a team with a too good of a defense for me to project any sort of legitimate ceiling here for Brock Purdy. So even though I think he's going to be a really solid quarterback, probably finish right around quarterback 9, quarterback 11, I don't see top 3 upside for him in any way. Like, all 3 of the other guys on this list could potentially leapfrog that tier ahead of them and perform as like top 5 guys, but I don't see that happening for Brock Purdy, so I had to put him in this tier, even though I think he's probably going to be a really solid guy, a really solid option. I will just note that of the guys on this entire list, he certainly has the least upside. Next up, we're moving into Tier 4 here. I'm going to categorize these as the streaming options here. I'll start things off with Jared Goff, currently being drafted as the quarterback 12, coming in as my quarterback 7. Just a really solid draft pick. We know Jared Goff is probably going to finish right around that low end quarterback one range, sort of like what we've seen guys like Kirk Cousins do in the past. Just the perennial 4,000 yard, 30 touchdown passer with very little rushing upside. But it's certainly a good pick. It's a guy that I'd love to pair with someone like Anthony Richardson or like Jaden Daniels, who's going to be drafted even later. Just take that upside shot and then give yourself some floor with Jared Goff. I think that's a really great option. And I think almost all of these guys sort of fit that bill, but I do think Jared Goff is probably the best option for that. Beyond that, though, we've got Tua Tagovailoa. Obviously, a guy that I think is going to be super safe, currently being drafted as the quarterback 8 or 13, my quarterback 15. The weapons around him are just too good. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle are awesome. They've got Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane. The ceiling's certainly there for Tua. We've seen him put together stretches of being a top 3 performer. He could certainly do it again this season. I've got no qualms if you want to just sort of punt the quarterback position and take Tua this season. After that, we've got Justin Herbert being drafted as the quarterback 15, coming in as my quarterback 14. I don't think the upside's necessarily there that it was the last couple seasons, but he's still clearly a really talented quarterback. The issue here is just the weapons around him and the offensive philosophy. They've got Harbaugh in as their head coach here and Greg Roman as the offensive coordinator. This is going to be a team that wants to play defense and run the ball effectively, and you're going to need Justin Herbert to be a lot more efficient than he's been in the years past instead of just being a volume-based performer. So we could see that happen, but you're going to need guys to step up in the receiving core like Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, for him to really end up being like a top 10 guy or someone that we're excited about. But I think he's pretty safe. He's obviously really talented. He adds a little bit on the ground. So I think he'll be better than people are expecting to be this season, but I don't see like top 5 upside like for him like I've seen in the past. Kirk Cousins, another solid streaming option this season, coming in as the quarterback 18 by consensus ADP and by my rankings. Obviously, some concerns here just with the health and what he's going to look like in Atlanta, but he's got weapons around him. We've seen him fit this category of quarterback over years past, and it's just wrong to just exclude him from this list again. After that, we've got Matthew Stafford, currently being drafted as the quarterback 20, coming in as my quarterback 16. Honestly, I think Stafford's a really great streaming option as well. He's got elite weapons around him and an offensive philosophy that is a team that wants to throw the ball, and if Cooper Kupp can stay healthy, they've got 2 arguably top 10 wide receivers in the NFL, and I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic there. Obviously, a lot of risk associated with Stafford just because of the injury history and all that, but he's free in drafts. If you punt the quarterback position and want to take 2 of these guys, play matchups, I think you could certainly do worse than that. And then Trevor Lawrence, I'll include him here as well. Quarterback 16 by ADP. My quarterback 13 in my rankings just got paid today. I'm recording this Thursday afternoon. Just gotten a word of him receiving a 5-year, $275 million extension. Personally, I think he's overpaid now. He hasn't really earned that contract, at least in my opinion. But he's got good enough weapons around him. We've seen him be good so far over the course of his NFL career. If he can take that step forward, we could see him potentially crack into that top 10 of the quarterback position. But at least for now, we know they're going to throw the ball a lot. They've got good weapons, and he'll be a low-end quarterback 1, high-end quarterback 2, and someone that we can stream in plus matchups this season. And the last tier I want to talk about, I just want to highlight 5 quarterbacks that I didn't discuss previously that I think have upside that warrants them potentially being drafted this season, despite the fact that they're not necessarily projected for high-end performances. I'll start things off with a couple rookies, starting things off with Jaden Daniels being drafted as the quarterback 17, coming in as my quarterback 23. And the reason here to draft Jaden Daniels is just purely upside. We know he's got the rushing tool set to potentially be a quarterback that could run for 1,000 rushing yards, and if you do that, you're really good for fantasy. So drafting Jaden Daniels late, taking a guy like Jared Goff with him, I think that makes a lot of sense because if he does break and hit right, he could certainly be a league-winning asset. After that, we've got Caleb Williams currently being drafted as the quarterback 14, coming in as my quarterback 24. A similar thing to Jaden Daniels. Obviously not the rushing upside here, but it's just all upside here. We don't know what to expect from Caleb Williams for sure, but the weapons around him and DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift, they've got a really great arsenal of weapons around Caleb Williams, and he is a quarterback that's supposed to step in and be NFL ready immediately. And if that happens, if he can be as good as CJ Stroud was last season, we could see Caleb Williams certainly end up being a top 10 quarterback this season. Deshaun Watson, I want to highlight him. Currently being drafted as the quarterback 21. He comes in as my quarterback 20, but we just have to remember that even though he hasn't necessarily been as mobile as he once was, he still adds quite a bit of value on the ground. He's got a good receiving core in Amari Cooper, David Njoku, Jerry Jeudy. Nick Chubb's banged up still coming off of that gnarly injury. I don't expect this to be as run-heavy of a Browns offense as it has been in the past. And when you've got these quarterbacks that offer you a high rushing floor, there's obviously upside there. So Watson could end up being like a sneaky top 10 quarterback this season. For the same reason, I want to talk about Russell Wilson here, currently being drafted as the quarterback 30, which I think is far too low. He finished as a quarterback 1 in points per game last season. He comes as my quarterback 11, obviously maybe a little bit too high there, but the reason is that Russ is just still a guy that obviously gets it done on the ground. He finished 8th in the NFL at the quarterback position in rushing yards last season, still threw for over 30 touchdowns in an offense that was just absolutely awful, and I think we could expect a lot better things out of him this season. We think that this Pittsburgh Steelers offense is going to be a lot better. George Pickens is more talented than anybody Russ had in Denver last season. Pat Freiermuth is a reliable tight end. They've got a better running game and offensive line here. I expect this to be a functional running offense. It's going to be able to take the top off the defense with play action, and that's what Russ does best. So I think we could see a season where Russ puts together a super high efficiency season, throws for 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, and adds 500 yards on the ground. Again, that would certainly make him a top 10 guy. So he's free in drafts. You don't need to draft him, but I just want to highlight him as someone that could potentially be a sneaky quarterback 1 this season. And then Geno Smith, for the same reasons, we saw him be a high-end performer just 2 seasons ago in an offense that didn't have Jackson Smith and Jigba, and now they've brought in a new offensive scheme, pulling the University of Washington's head coach as their offensive coordinator. This is going to be an offense that's going to be much more modern, not just the ground and pound offense that Pete Carroll wanted to run. So we could see this team air it out. They've got the weapons to be high-end performers, and Geno can add a bit of a rushing upside as well. So I think Geno could certainly end up being a top 10 quarterback this season. Being drafted as the quarterback 24 is just a little bit too low for me. I think he's definitely got upside and should be looked at. So that'll do it for the quarterback tier list. Up next, I'll be doing a running back tier list. I'll try to keep these videos somewhat short. I know they can get really long, especially as we get into the running backs, wide receivers, just because we're going to be talking about a lot more players here. So I'll try to make sure all these videos stay under 30 minutes. I know you guys don't necessarily like it when these videos get to be too long, just 'cause it's tough to take the time out of your day to watch the whole thing. But a lot of fun making these videos. If you guys have any questions about how I'm coming up with these sort of tier breaks, want any more information there, if you've got any comments or disagreements, let me know in the comments section. It's a lot of fun interacting with you guys, and it's been super fun there. I want to thank you all. We hit our goal of 1,000 subscribers this morning. It was super exciting to wake up to. It's been a goal of mine for a long time, so I just want to thank you all. It's been a lot of fun for the last several years. It's been like 5 years now doing this. I guess 4 years, I think 5 years. But it's just been a lot of fun. I really appreciate all of you guys. It's been super fun doing this, and we're going to keep doing it for a long time coming. So appreciate all of you guys. Just wanted to say thank you. And if you guys haven't subscribed already, you're not going to be one of the first 1,000 subscribers, but you can still be one of the first 2,000 subscribers. So if you want to make sure you get more videos like this, we'll be putting out videos, 3 to 4 videos a week over the course of the off season, doing even more of that during the regular season, and just being here all year round to help you guys win your fantasy leagues this season. So it's going to be a lot of fun. If you don't want to miss out on any of that, just make sure you subscribe to the channel, and it'll be a lot of fun to just sort of see how things roll this year. So appreciate all you guys. It's been a lot of fun. We got a lot more coming. So thanks, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.